Both of them, of course, are Irishmen. Shaw was the greatest practitioner of the comedy of ideas. So he was the greatest practitioner of the comedy of ideas, while Wilde that of the new comedy of manners. Shaw, who was a great thinker, represented the Puritan side of the Anglo-Irish tradition. Shaw, who was a great thinker, represented the Puritan side of the Anglo-Irish tradition. Wilde, on the other hand, a life of luxury and frivolity, was not a deep thinker as Shaw, and his attitude to life was essentially a playful one. Now, the success of Oscar Wilde as a writer of artificial comedy or the comedy of manners was mainly due to his being a social entertainer, and it is mainly as entertainment that his plays have survived. Wilde may be considered, therefore, as the father of the comedy of pure entertainment, as Shaw is the father of the comedy of ideas. So who is the father of the comedy of pure entertainment? Of course, Oscar Wilde. And who is the father of the comedy of ideas? Bernard Shaw. Okay, so other modern writers who have followed Wilde directly, of course, came after Shaw and after Wilde. We have some important also dramatists like Somerset Maugham and Wale Coward. Okay, now moving a little bit, the artificial comedy of the last 50 years in England, the artificial comedy of the last 50 years in England does not compare well with the artificial comedy of the Restoration. The reason is that in the 20th century there is a lot of confusion and skepticism about social values. Now, moreover, social manners change so rapidly in the modern time. So, social manners change so rapidly in the modern time that the comedy of manners grows out of date more rapidly than any other type of drama. Okay, but the artificial comedy of the last 50 years in England does not compare well with the artificial comedy of the Restoration. Now, the reason for this, the reason is that in the 20th century there is a lot of confusion and skepticism about social values. So there is a lot of confusion and skepticism about social values. Moreover, social manners change so rapidly in the modern time that the comedy of manners grows out of date more rapidly than any other type of drama. This is not the case with the comedy of ideas or social comedy. So this is not the case with the comedy of ideas or social comedies. Now, George Bernard Shaw, again, we consider him, or he is considered by critics, as the father of the comedy of ideas. So you may have a question like, who is the father of the comedy of ideas? I'm giving you 4 names, including Bernard Shaw. Okay, so you need to remember that name, and you need to remember that he is the father of the comedy of ideas. And he was genius his intellectual equipment was far greater than that of any of his contemporaries. He alone had understood the greatness of Ibsen, so he could know quite well and understanding well the greatness of Ibsen. And he decided that, like Ibsen's, his plays would also be the vehicles of ideas. So because of his influence by Ibsen, he decided that, like Ibsen's, his plays would also be the vehicles of ideas. Okay. Now, but he is not typically the same as Ibsen, because, but unlike Ibsen's grim and serious temperament, Shaw was characterized by jest and by humor and verbal wit. So Ibsen was characterized by serious temperament. Shaw was characterized by jest and verbal wit. He also had a genuine artist gift for form, and he could not tolerate any circumstances in construction. For this purpose, he had studied every detail of theatrical workmanship. In each of his plays, he presented a certain problem connected with modern life, and his characters discuss it thoroughly. Okay, now in order to make his ideas still more explicit, he added prefaces to his plays. So he decided to add like an introduction to his plays. Why? To make it clearer, to make his ideas and his plays clearer and easy to be understood, in which he explored the theme more fully. So he added some prefaces to his plays, and in that prefaces he explored the theme more fully. The main burden of his plays is that the civilized man must either develop or perish. Other modern dramatists who followed the example of Bernard Shaw and wrote comedies of ideas were Barker, Galsworthy, James Birdie, Priestley Barry, and also John Masefield. So these writers followed the same way, and they followed the example of Bernard Shaw. But none of them attained the standard reached by Shaw. So they tried to follow him, but no one of them could reach the same level and the same standard reached by Shaw. Now, besides the artificial comedy,